Open up your Bibles. We're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 18 today. So 1 Samuel chapter 18, and let me tell you what went on with Holy, Holy, Holy there. There is a track that is attached to that thing, and we got to figure out how to get rid of it, because what happens is we get to the end of service and we forget about it, and then we don't think about it. And honestly, this morning, whenever I was working on it and looking at it, yeah, I bet you Tim takes care of it. As I was looking at it, I actually clicked on it, and I was like, oh, good, it's not playing. And then guess what happens? It played. So either way, it's part of it. There's always going to be something there. But either way, if you guys have your Bibles, we're in 1 Samuel chapter 18. We're continuing with David. Today, we're going to be looking at how David, and if you're going to be a follower of God, how you're going to just look different. You're going to have to live different. Everything about you has got to be different in some way. And so following God means living differently. It really does. And so in this case, we're looking at how David is. Now, I know what you're thinking as we go through this, because we run into a problem. As we talk about David and him living his life right and doing good things, you're always constantly reminded of his future. Because in his future, he's not going to live his life right. He's not going to do things right. He's going to do some horrible things. And so don't think about them yet. We're going to get to those. We're going to talk about those. But let's look at where he is right now. And up until now, he's really lived his life for the Lord. And it's starting to see in his relationship with others. It's seeing in his relationship with the way the world goes. So that's what we've got going on. I apologize. They're harvesting, and I can't breathe. So either way, 1 Samuel chapter 18, I'm going to start by reading verses 5 down to 16. There are more verses, but we're not going to read those here just because of what we've got. So I am going to do this. I am going to pause halfway through and just talk about a few things, because there's some things you're going to have questions about. So I want to go ahead and address them before we get too much further. Starting at verse 5, it says this. Whatever mission Saul sent David on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. When the men were returning home after David had killed a Philistine, the women came out of the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and timbrels and lyres. As they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Let me pause right there. So up until this point, we don't know much about David except that he was a kid, right? He's fairly young, and Samuel comes in and says, God has chosen you to be king of Israel. So congratulations, you're going to be the king of Israel. Now go back out to the field and shepherd those sheep, right? That's pretty much how it happened. Saul was still king. In fact, Saul stays king for a very long time after this happens. So God is working in people's hearts. God is working in the heart of Saul, and God is working in the heart of David. He gives him some things that he wants him to do that kind of change things. And one of them is he gets to kill Goliath. He steps up, and he's the triumphant hero of the day. He gave all the glory to God. He says, listen, this is not me. This is God doing this. And he kills Goliath. Basically, they won the battle with the Philistines, not the war. So David is automatically revered by all the military men. So naturally, he's a good fit to be a military leader. Because, I mean, think about it. If I'm going to follow somebody, I don't want to follow a coward. I want to follow somebody like David, who he really is good when it comes to being a warrior. And so they follow him. He puts them up in the ranks. He becomes one of his officers. And he takes these men out to battles. And every battle he goes to, he wins. So guess which? I want to work for him, okay? But either way, so every battle he goes to, he wins. And you would think that Saul would be happy. He's got this guy who's a leader in his army, and everything this guy does wins, but he hears people talking, and they're singing a song, and it says this. He says, Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. And Saul's going to get jealous. We all know how jealousy goes. You do not have to have a rhyme or reason to be jealous, to have resentment. These things come without any reason whatsoever. In his case, he may be rightfully so to have a little bit of jealousy, but he is jealous of David. But hold on, there's more. Not only is David talented when it comes to being a warrior and a leader, he's also talented when it comes to music, and he's very good at it. He plays the lyre or a harp, is what from I understand. And so he actually will be in the house of Saul, because Saul deals with depression. We're going to find that if you look at his life, he struggles with depression all the time. I don't know if he struggles, but he has depression all the time. And so one of the things that they do is they bring in musicians to come in and they play, and it kind of encourages them. Well, I don't think a harp would encourage me, but either way, he comes in and he plays, and as he's playing for him, it should encourage Saul. And it's not going to, because his jealousy and his anger is building up so much that at this point it's not going to make a difference. At verse 8 now. Saul was very angry. The refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. The next verse says this. The next day, an evil spirit from the Lord came forcefully on Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the lyre, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David to the wall, but David eluded him twice. All right, there's a hiccup here. It says there's an evil spirit from the Lord. First of all, the Lord cannot be evil. It's impossible. Goodness is based upon the Lord. So if he's up or down, which he doesn't change, if he's down, that doesn't matter, because that's still the standard of good. Okay, so we have to think of it this way. A good understanding of this is that God allows evil to work in this world. And we know that. We hate it, but it happens. God allows the demons of this world to do their work here on this world. And what he does is he allows them to do it, and he puts them at a certain location, at certain times, to do certain things. But remember something, he still has overall control, okay? Because he knows what's going on, because he has a master plan that he's got set out, how things are going to work out. Perfect example of this. This morning, our dog Trixie, okay, who I'm just going to tell you right now, I have talked good about my cat over the years. You guys know about my cat? Trixie's a jerk to the cat. Trixie's about to go out the door if he doesn't quit being so mean to my cat. But either way, Trixie was being a jerk this morning. At what time was he barking? She barking? Yeah, 5:30. Well, I didn't hear it till 6, but either way, 5:30, Hope was up trying to get this dog to quit barking because, you know, we love our kids and we don't want them to wake up. And so that's what it was. Either way, so this morning I was getting ready. Trixie's running all over the house. She's super excited because, you know, that's when you should be excited, is early in the morning. She's running all over the house, and I've got a shirt that I wore to sleep in. And I took that shirt and I threw it over by the door, and Trixie saw that shirt, and she took off after that shirt like you wouldn't believe. She ran straight into that shirt. She grabbed it, and she took off just across because you know what she's thinking? I got to get away from this guy. He's going to take this shirt away. So I start walking towards the shirt, but I'm not in a hurry to save the shirt. I'm making a point with this. Believe me, this is planned, okay? So I'm not in a hurry to get the shirt because this dog can't tear anything up. She can chew on something for 2 weeks and it just has a little mark on it. I'm not worried about her tearing up my sleeping shirt, which we all know are, they don't look good, do they? Okay? So I'm not worried about her getting it. So I'm slowly walking towards her. I didn't run to stop her. I didn't yell at her. Well, I may have yelled at her. I didn't chase her down. I just followed behind the dog, and that dog, you know, running with that thing, trying to get away from me, chewing on it as fast as she can, because if she can get some chews in, I guess it makes her feel better. And then I walk over to get the shirt, and what does she do one more time? She takes off another direction. I'm smarter than her. I know that if she's heading towards a corner, just get her in the corner. So either way, I reach down and I take my shirt away from her. Okay? Now, if I was really, really worried about that shirt, I would have reacted a lot quicker. In this case we're looking at, God knows what he needs to get to. He knows the overall. He's okay with letting a demon mess with Saul. Okay? Because he knows that overall, this is part of it. This is okay. I can take care of the overall. And that's what God does. When it says an evil spirit came upon that came from God, it wasn't God coming upon him. It was an evil spirit that God allowed to come upon him. We saw that again in Pharaoh. You remember Pharaoh? God allowed an evil spirit to come upon Pharaoh, and that happened. And so it's the same thing. So don't get confused when we look at that. But either way, let's look at what happened right quick. Saul hates David because of jealousy. Does he have a reason, a real reason to try to kill David? I mean, should you have a reason to try to kill somebody? Let's be honest. Right? I mean, David has only done good for him. It killed Goliath. He plays the instrument for him. He should be happy to have him around, but he doesn't like him because we all know, we got to touch on this for a second. I know this is not something you don't know, but let's bring it up. Jealousy and resentment are not always rational thinking. but rephrase it, are never rational thinking. Right? Am I the only person that gets jealous and resentful? All right? So we don't want to become him. In a time period where a person could be killed and nobody gets punished for it, Saul was going to try killing him. 2 times he tries to stick a spear in his chest. 2 times he picks up a spear and he throws it at him at this point, it happens more later, and tries to get him with it, pin him to the wall with the spear. 2 times. Jealousy will get away from you, folks. You got to keep it in check. Going on from there, it says, verse 12, Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David. We'll come back to that one. But he had departed from Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men, and David led the troops in their campaigns. In everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their campaigns. So we see this. He can't figure out what to do with them. I'm just going to get him out of my sight. I'll send him off. And so what he does is he goes and he leads a campaign, which just makes it worse because jealousy just compounds on top of jealousy. Everything. You ever have those people that they always seem to do things right and you hate them for it? Go ahead. Hands up. Anybody? That's right. Well, I don't do that. But you guys are horrible people. I'm telling you that now. All right. No, we do that. Yes. Just some people are like, oh, why does he get that and not? The Bible tells us why. Because the Lord was with him, because he loved the Lord. Now, as Christians, we should never be jealous of somebody for that reason. I'll tell you right now, I hate when when people who are bad get good things. It's unjustified. You hate that. But you'll find in Scripture that happens. Saul was king of Israel. Did not deserve it, was not good at it, should have been taken down, and guess what? God took care of it on his hand. So let's look at this. I'm going to go through all of my points fairly quick. First of all, we're looking at David and how he followed God and how he had to live differently. The reason is because David's priorities were set. David had set his priorities and he kept them set. That's what David did. He knew what he wanted and he kept it that way. If we look at this, first, David was completely surrendered over to his job, to whatever his work was. Yes, he was surrendered over the Lord, but he was surrendered to whatever his job was. It said that David knew that Saul wanted to kill him. Still, every day he walked into the palace, he picked up his harp, and he went to work. I'm going to tell you something that'll help out Christians. If you're a true believer in Christ, one of the best things that you can do is have a good work ethic. You can have a good work ethic. I'm going to be doing a series here eventually called the Sissification of America. Because we become sissies when it comes to everything, haven't we? We don't want a boss who's too hard on us. We don't want work that takes too much time. We don't want to have to put too much effort into anything. We don't want. We're becoming sissies. That's not in the Bible. I'm just telling you that now, okay? It's not a theological term that I learned in seminary either, okay? This is one of them things that we've just become because you saw David. His life was horrible when he went into that palace every day. And he still went into it because he was surrendered over to what God had put him to do. God had given him the job, and he says, okay, I will do my job to the best of my abilities. And I'm going to tell you right now, as Christians, that's how we should live our lives. I think we spend too much time telling everybody, oh, you work too hard. Oh, you do too much. Folks, if you're doing it for God, burn those candles at both ends. Why in the world can we not work hard? Why in the world can we not put a lot of effort into it? Why in the world can we not sacrifice? Why in the world can we not hurt ourselves when it comes to taking care of God's work? And I think if God has put you in a position to do it to the best of your abilities and do it to bring glory to God. Because it is admirable for us to do those things. Now, I am a person who burns the candle at both ends. I am the person that stands in front of you today because I am tired, or I am tired today. It has been an extremely long week. But those things that I did this week do not justify who I am. They do not define me. I'm a Christian. I'm a father. I'm a husband. But I'm a Christian first. And those things have to be at the forefront. And if you're going to do it, surrender over to it and do it right. I promise you, God can use you wherever He puts you. He can use you. But it's like we're always afraid to commit. If there's anything about our generation, We're afraid to commit to stuff. People don't want to get married nowadays. They just want to shack up. People don't want to do the whole thing where they commit to a job for a long term. They just want to bounce around from place to place, always looking for something better. People don't want to do the things that it takes to actually live their lives and have a joyful life like God says. It's okay to do that. Be surrendered over to whatever it is that you are. David was also very steadfast. He was hard-headed. I'm going to be honest. David's hard-headed. I mean, now, I'm going to tell you this right now. If your boss is trying to kill you, that's liable reason to change jobs, first of all, okay? And I'm sure that's happened before. But either way, I mean, think about it. Saul is trying to pin him to the wall. Trying to pin him to the wall with a spear. And David still comes to work every day. He does not quit. He does not, I guarantee he didn't wake up one day and said, I'm kind of tired. I'm not going to go in today. Saul was trying to kill David. David knew he had a duty to fulfill. He knew he had it, and he was going to continue it. Now, David was also based upon the promises of God. God had promised him that you will be king of Israel one day. I don't think David was going in every day thinking, all right, Saul's probably going to fall down today and get hurt. I'll be the king then. I don't think he's doing that. He's going in and he's doing his job the way that he's supposed to be doing it. And that's what we should be doing. We should be steadfast in the way God has put us to do. Remember this. You're not where you are because you chose it always. You're where you are because God chose you. I'll tell you this. Can I get on a soapbox real quick? Can anybody give me permission? Really? All right, good. Somebody gave it. I don't care who it was. Somebody said it. All right, here we go. You ready? All of you teachers out here, I'm just picking on the teachers for a second. God did not, this is my belief, God did not send you to school for 4 years to become a teacher just to make a living. If you're a Christian, you should be teaching for God. You should be teaching God. I firmly believe that one of the reasons that God sent me to school to be a teacher is so that I can learn how to teach His Word. I must have said her. I'm sorry, I got loud. I think that that's the reason He sends us to do these things. Some of you guys are electricians or work on heating and air, or I don't know. I wasn't picking you out, Dale. I know you're the only one. You're the only one in the whole area. So either way, whatever it is that God has put you to do it for God, and then make money for it on the side. Don't make the money and make that what your whole life is about. I promise you, you're going to get to the end and you're going to retire and you're going to be like, well, I did nothing for God. You really think that God is going to send you to all the training that He sent you to, put you through all the skills that you've learned over the years, just so you can go on vacation once a year, just so you can pay your bills? I don't think that's what God gave us these skills for. The skills are there for God. All right, I'm getting down off the soapbox. Last one. So David was surrendered. He was steadfast, but he was also very submissive. David took his position very serious, regardless of the fact that he had poor leadership above him. I mean, let's be honest. We've all had managers. We've all had bosses. We've all had administrators. Around 75% of them are horrible. That's just what it comes down to. There's so many leadership positions and so many bad leaders out there. You understand that? Everybody's going, yeah, right? Hey, you may be one of them. No, I'm joking. I'm just joking. Sorry. All right, but he had poor leadership. Listen, this is the thing. This doesn't put us out. Colossians 3:23 says this: whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your... No, it doesn't say that. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. You and I do not work for somebody who signs a paycheck. That's not who we work for. We work for God. And He tells us that everybody who's in authority, whether it's at the top of the business that you work for, whether it's somebody in the community that you work for, whether it's a family member that you work for, that God put them in the position of authority. And that goes all the way down the rung, no matter how low they are or no matter how high they are. God put them in that position. No amens on that one, did they? We don't like that because some of them are not good. Some of them are great. Doesn't matter. Who do you work for? God. That is probably the worst teaching you guys will ever get right there, isn't it? It's like, come on, Mark, do something fun. I know it's not. It's like we work for this. All right, let's do this real quick. The people who are working right now, you're like, yes, I understand what you're saying. The people who are not working, students, everybody who's a student in here, listen to me real quick. That's your job. You're not getting paid for it, but you got to do it. And you have to be there. That means that you got to listen to me. You got to listen to me. I'm looking around. All right, that means that your teachers were placed in your life because of the authority that God put them in. Look at me when I'm talking, y'all. That means that God put the administrators in your life because of the authority in your life. That means that God put the parents in your life because of the authority that God put in your life. And you see on God put them there. That means you do your job to the best of your abilities. And your job at that time is being a student. And it's admirable before God. I'm trying to get them all, but they're not all looking at me. You understand what I'm saying? Don't you hate it when he does that? All right, let's do this one, okay? You guys are off the hook for a little bit. Retired people. I know you're thinking, Mark, I don't work for nobody. Thank you, and I'm glad that you put in all those years. I'm going to tell you something. You still work for God. You do not retire from being a Christian. And I know that in our society, our very plush society, we have got it set that a person, once they've worked for so many years, they get to sit back and relax and go to the doctor every week, right? That's what it is. Hey, God does not take vacation, and neither does his work. I know that you may not physically be able to do some things, but man, you can pray. You can send cards to people. You can encourage. I think the most encouraging people in my life have been people who are retired because they take the time to, because they love each other. I know a woman that if you were on the prayer list at the church, she would send you a card every month. Every month. She said, I can't do much, but I can do that. When she was running low on money, the church paid for the stamps. But she still would send a card to him. My mom was on the prayer list. Folks, she lives way up there, out in the middle of nowhere. My mom was on that prayer list. She was on the prayer list down here. That's where it was at. She sent a card to my mom every month until I said, you don't have to send it to my mom anymore. You do not know how much that meant to my mom, how much that meant to my dad, who doesn't go to church on a regular basis. Those things can be done if you do them for God. And God bless his work. God bless his work. He does. He wants us to do stuff. He wants you to burn the candle. Now, I got to say this real quick. There's a time to stop. When you go home at night, there's nothing wrong with sitting and watching a movie with your family. There's nothing wrong with playing video games with your kids. There's nothing wrong with going on vacation. When you do those all the way too. Turn off it. Turn off work. Turn those things off. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to tell you something. Get those priorities right. It's not about having fun in life. It's about serving God and working for God. All right, I know, that was a soapbox and a half. I'm sorry about that, folks. All right, I really never planned it. All right, now I'm going to tell you another story that's going on here. David was perceived differently by everybody. When it says that his priorities were set, yes, his priorities were set. And since his priorities were set, everybody looked at him differently. Let's look at how Saul looked at him, first of all. And I didn't read this part. But Saul had a plan to get rid of David. His plan was very simple. You ready? I'll put him in the military. As a military leader, he's bound to go to enough wars. He's eventually going to die. It wasn't working fast enough. He didn't have David close to him enough. So what he says is, I'm going to have him marry one of my daughters. Okay, I think the name was hold on, I've got it written down. Merab, that was her name. He said, I'm going to have him marry Merab. You know, because everybody wants to kill their son-in-laws. But either way, let's move on. So he's going to have him marry Merab. Merab did not like David. She did not care for David one bit. She was following on Saul's footsteps. She hated David. She didn't want to marry him. Eventually, the wedding got called off. Okay? But he had another daughter. Her name was Michelle. Michelle loved David. And eventually, they end up getting married. But before they get married, David protests. He says, I'm just a shepherd guy. I cannot marry the king's daughter. It's pretty neat that he would say that. I mean, the guy who's been anointed king saying, I'm not good enough to marry a queen or a princess. It's just pretty neat that he's that type of person. All right, but the whole plan was simple. Saul was going to get him close to him, and then it gives him a position he could put him, send him into the front lines, kind of like David does later We'll get to that one later. And he sends them in front lines, and then everybody pulls back and he dies. That was the plan. Doesn't fall through, but that was the plan. You see, Saul perceived David with hatred, absolute hatred. He wanted to kill David, and he was coming up with all these plans to take David down. Real quick, anybody ever had resentment in your hearts? Let's do the resentment hands again real quick. When you have resentment in your hearts, you will come up with ways to take people down, won't you? You will have those conversations in your mind, like when you're taking showers and you're in there talking back and forth with the conversations. And you ever notice you don't lose those conversations? It's amazing how that works. You never lose those arguments. But that's what we're looking at here. Saul is building himself up. He's coming up with all these scenarios. This will work out great. Let's get to how he got to that point. When he looked at David, he looked at him through jealous eyes. And if you're looking at somebody through jealousy, you will not see them as for who they really are. Think about this. I got some explanation of David. He was a young man who had everything. He seems to have everything. And he had everything that Saul was not. Saul had a lot. He just didn't see it. He was a young man who walked with God. He saw him, that the way that he carried himself very highly, very well, and so people automatically liked him with that. He was ambitious, he was faithful, he was clean, spiritually clean, he lived his life right. And Saul hated him because of these things. Have you ever met somebody who's really good at stuff and you can't stand him over it? That's what you're looking at. He was everything that I am not. And it's amazing how that makes us angry. There's something wrong with that, isn't there? I think it's called sinful attitudes. That's what we have. Yes, everybody does. You can give me an amen if you believe that. But either way, I know you're not going to. All right, we have those sinful attitudes. We don't like people whenever they do good. We don't like people who are living in a way that's right and I'm not living wrong, because it kind of points it out to us. Saul hated David so much that he was willing to kill him. When that didn't work, he was going to try deceit by doing it through his daughters. I mean, think about this. He hated him so much, he was willing to put his daughters through pain in order to kill David. Absolute hatred, absolute jealousy. It just was not going away. Saul hated David, but he hated him because God was with him. When it really comes down to it, God was blessing David. He was not blessing Saul. And I'm going to tell you something as a Christian. And if you don't get anything else, get this. Unbelievers will hate us for what we have. They will hate us. They don't know why, but they will hate us for what we have. They will be jealous. They will call us hypocrites. They will call us, better than them. They will call us stupid. They will say we don't understand science. They will say that we're foolish. They will come across all these things. So, folks, the same intelligence that are in here is the same intelligence that are out there. Just the difference is ours have found the truth. And in this case, if you're a Christian, if you're living your life certain ways, the society is going to go against us because society has to go against us. Because society is anti-God. And if you are pro-God, then they are anti-God. And society is going to do everything they can to get us. And they're doing it already. They're changing the laws around us. You realize that they're making words that are in here, teachings that are in here, they're labeling them as hate speech, which means you go to jail for it. Which means if we preach from here, we're filled with hate, which somehow hatred became against the law. I mean, be honest. Christians don't preach out of the Bible because we hate people. We preach out of the Bible because we love people. And we want to save them. But they consider that hate speech because we're hurting somebody's feelings. Yes! Hurt their feelings to get them to know Christ. If that's what it takes. Bend the rules a little bit. Make people angry. Make people frustrated. And in this case, this is what was going on right here. He hated him. And so he's willing to hurt him. And the same thing is going to happen to us. But hold on. There's some positives in this. Ready? Let's look at how other people perceived him. It tells us in the verses. First of all, Saul's servants in his palace, when they saw David, they thought, man, that guy carries himself well. They liked David. Imagine working in a palace and the king hates this one guy and everybody else is like, man, I like him. I don't know about you guys, but I really like that guy. Well, that's how it was. The servants loved him. Not only did the servants love him, all the subjects of Saul loved him as well. That's why they were singing that song praising him. If they would have been quiet, it wouldn't have caused me problems, but they were praising David. They said, Saul has killed his thousands. David has killed his 10,000s. So it's saying Saul's doing an okay job, but David, boy, he's nailing it. He's on top of it, right? And if you're living your life right, there's people who are going to look at you and say, good job. If you're living your life right, there's going to be those people that do that. But ones that we notice are the ones who are the haters, right? The ones who can't stand us. That's what we notice more. But if you're living your life right, there are people who are watching you, who are paying attention to you, and you don't even know that they're watching you. All right, let's do this real quick. I need to do it. One more show of hands. No more after this. Ready? But you got to be honest on this one. How many of you guys get on Facebook? Go ahead and put your hand up if you get on Facebook. All right, good. Now, out of this group that's right here, we have two different people out of the ones that did Facebook. If you don't do Facebook, your lives are happier than ours. I'm just going to tell you that now. But anyway, all right, for the Facebook goers, you ready? There's two different types. There's posters and there's watchers, right? I believe, this is my own personal theory. I may be wrong, but usually I'm not. All right? In my mind. Here we go. I believe that there's a lot more watchers than there are posters, right? And I'm getting to where I know this because now Facebook will tell you how many people saw your post, that type of thing, but only 3 people liked it. I just don't get that, either. But either, all right, the posters. Posters are the people that put something on there almost every day. Mitch Green. If you guys know Mitch Green, every day he's got something on there. There's just some people that put them on there every day. The watchers, and I'm becoming closer to a poster than a watcher, long ways away from it, but getting there. The watchers are the ones who do this. They just read everything, right? It's like they just read it, but they don't comment on it. Because if you're like me, you type up this really good comment, and then, nah, I'm not going to send it. You ever do that? All right, but anyway, that's what the watchers do. They just watch, and they pay attention to it, and they listen to what's going on, and they read all the comments, and they watch the fights go on, and just, oh, this is fun. That's what we do. That's what watchers do, right? Okay. What you realize is there's a lot of watchers out there, and they're watching you. And I know you may not be putting things on Facebook, but there's people watching you everywhere you go. Everywhere you go. When I came back from the Army, this is one of the oddest things. At the time, it just struck me, and because I didn't understand psychology and people. When I came back from the Army, I met this girl, okay? And it was just out of the blue, I met her. I'd been gone for 4 years by that time. And I met this girl, and somebody said, hey, this is Mark Pickard, and she told me her name. I said, oh, nice to meet you, like that. And she went, you're Mark Pickard? Just like that. And I thought, maybe. So anyway, she said, you're Mark Pickard? She said, my boyfriend talks about you all the time. I know, that's kind of odd. Okay, weird. Let's just say it. All right. She says, you went to school with him, and he admired you, apparently. She said, and she told me his name. He was 4 years younger than me, folks. 4 years younger. And she said, he knew exactly who we were. Now, that's the only person that ever knew who I was. But other than that, that's how this works. People are watching. People are paying attention. People are looking at you. And I know that that's a good thing and a bad thing, but think about this. They are watching what you do, what you say, how you act, and what your priorities are. Everybody here. It happens for everybody. I know you think, oh, not me, Mark. I'm past that point in my life. No, you're not. You make an influence on people. You make a change in people's lives just because you're here. God does not make mistakes. He did not accidentally make you. He did not accidentally put you where you are in life. He did not accidentally make you a Christian. It's none of those things are by accident. God has a very specific plan, and you may be making all the change in a person's life that you don't even know who they are. You don't even have to know that person, and you can change their lives. You're special. But that also means responsibility, that you have to live your life right, because all those people are watching you. So others perceived him. I think what's interesting is how David perceived himself. David, okay, so King Saul says, I'm going to make my daughter your wife. David says, man, I'm not worthy of that. This is the guy that killed a bear, a lion, and Goliath, right? This is a guy who hangs out in the palace daily. This is a guy who takes many men all the time to war, and they win all the time. And then when the king says, a king who's very unrighteous, who very doesn't follow God, who doesn't have anything doing right, who people don't like, says, hey, I'm going to give my daughter to you in marriage. He says, man, I'm not really worthy of that. That's the way we should be. He was very humble. Couple things. I'm just going to sum something up for you real quick, then we'll get close to finishing this. We cannot allow jealousy and anger to go unchecked in our lives. If you have jealousy, if you have resentment, if you have anger, you better get them in check, because they're going to change all of your emotions. They're going to take you down a bad path that leads to sin and destruction. That's what they do. That's what we're seeing in Saul, is a man who's allowing his emotions to go unchecked. He's labeled it as depression in this case, but that doesn't change the fact he's still responsible for them. He has got to get himself in order. He never does. And then also, if you serve God, some people are going to love you, and some people are going to hate you. Get it in your head right now. There are some people who are not going to like you if you serve God, and you got to decide which is more important, God or those haters out there. I'll be honest with you, there's going to be people who hate you whether you serve God. That's just how this works. You cannot be liked by everybody. That's why, because there's always watchers out there who don't hit like on those Facebook pages. Same thing. All right, let's finish this up. Last thing I want to tell you, and then we'll be done with this. For all of you guys who are trying to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do? What good is this going to do for me? It comes down to this. David knew that his power was not in himself. He absolutely knew that who he was not based upon him, the fact that he's a good person, the fact that he's killed bears and lions and Goliaths. His power was completely in God. Completely in God. And I told you about the God bumps that I got whenever he ran out there, and he grabs his sling, okay, and he takes his sling out there and he looks straight Goliath in the eyes, and he says, you're not going to talk down to God. He says, I'm going to kill you just because you do that, right? And he relies completely on God to take care of this Goliath that's in front of him. Well, all of his power was based on God. Hey, let's just do this real quick. Do any of you ever feel like you're really in control of anything? Let's be honest, right? We think, I got control of stuff. And then a deer runs out in front of you, right? I've got control of stuff. And then your kid's grade report cards come out, right? I've got control of stuff. And then life happens, right? You wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You got a crick in your neck. You got cancer. You name it. You cannot control anything. Our power comes in God. And if you're trying to get it from anywhere else, you're failing. I can promise you that. So David's power came from God. But then the last thing is this. His resources came from God. Think about all that David was up until this point. He could play the instruments. That talent comes from God, right? And he was using it for God. He could take people to war, and he was a great leader when it came to it. And I know that we say, God is not in war. Yes, he is. God is in war. Okay? God made us. God can destroy us. That's his choice. And I know you may not like that, but that's true. It's in the Bible. So he can do that. He can send people to war, and he can bless certain armies. He really can. And in this case, he always blessed David whenever he went to it. So he had his talents as far as his musician he was, as far as being a military leader he was, as far as being a warrior. If I had to go to battle with anybody, I wanted David beside me, because that was where his strength was. He was a true battler, true warrior, but also his charisma. You can't make people like you. That's actually a gift that comes from God, where God works on you and makes you into the person that people want to follow and want to be with and want to be that way. And that comes from God. David's resources were not his own. They came from God. And it's all because his life was built on his faith in God. And there are people right here, right now, you don't have faith in God at all. At all. You may be a church a seat warmer. You may be a cultural Christian, that you go to church because that's what's culturally accepted. That's what my mom does. That's what my dad does. That may be why you go, or because you'd hate to have to, miss a day and not find out what's going on around. But if that's the reason you're going, it's not working. It all comes down to your faith in the Lord. And if you want to be the person like David was, if you want to be the person that people look at and says, ooh, that's the way a Christian should live their lives, it starts with knowing God. It starts with knowing Christ. And if you don't know Christ, then right now is a good time for you to do it. Give your life to Jesus. It starts with saying, Jesus, I'm sorry for my sins. I'm sorry for the way I've lived my life. Please forgive me for my sins, and I commit my life to you. You commit your life to Jesus. And all of you people who have been Christians for a long time, it's called a recommitment. You recommit your life. You should do this daily. Lord, today I'm going to do better than I did yesterday. Today I'm going to do better than I did last week. Lord, I can't do it on my own. Help me to do this. Folks, our goal is to get better, not worse. Our goal is to move forward, not backwards. Our goal is to make God happy in us, not make ourselves happy. If you guys don't know Christ, today would be a day to do it. For those of you who do know Christ, give your lives to Christ again today. If you guys would stand for a few moments. I know you saw Jason walk up, so you knew I was done.